Lcjensen here. Tonight we are going to make some sourdough brownies using our chocolate sourdough starter that we started making. And then we're going to make some lamb naan pockets for dinner tonight. So let's start by getting our brownie base ready. We are going to melt 1 stick of butter with 1.5 cups of chocolate chips and 2 teaspoons of vanilla and some cocoa and 1/2 cup of cocoa powder. So let's get the melting. I'm going to get my chocolate chips out. So we need 1.5 cups of chocolate chips. And I'm using semi-sweet because they're my favorite. And I love Ghirardelli. Ghirardelli is my favorite. I know they're the bougie chips, but they're delicious. So we're going to get these melted up. We need 1.5 cups. And we're going to save the last little bit to mix in to our brownie. So you have some like chocolate chip chunks in your brownie. And then we're going to add in 1/2 cup of cocoa powder. And this is going to make kind of the chocolate base to it. And I'm going to use up the rest of this and open up another one. You want to use like a regular cocoa powder. You don't want to use a special dark one. It will just make your brownies too bitter. So just kind of a regular, this is good old Nestle cocoa powder. It works great for brownies. I once tried to make brownies with like the Hershey Special Dark and they were just so bitter. So for this, you really want to use just a regular one. We're going to add, again, we want about 1/2 cup of cocoa powder. There we go. I'm going to add this into our cup as well. We're going to let that kind of melt all together to make a nice little paste, plus 2 teaspoons of vanilla. We're going to get this part done first because this is the part, the brownies take, the longest to cook. So 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And we'll just give it a couple stirs here and then while we mix up, we wait for the other ingredients to mix up. So let's give it a start, but it might take a minute before that butter is truly melted. And then there we go. I just turn my heat down a little bit to about a 6 so we don't burn the chocolate. You could always take the time to do it in a double boiler if you wanted to, but since we are adding a whole stick of butter in here, you don't have to really worry about your chocolate kind of scorching. Okay. We'll let that melt. And now we're going to work on our base for it. So we are going to mix together 1 cup of granulated sugar with 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and then 2 whole eggs plus 1 yolk. That's going to give you a nice, really rich brownie. So we're now do 1/2 cup of, and you want to make sure you pack it down, packed brown sugar. I'm going to slide these out of the way for right now. I've got my eggs right here. We're going to put 2 whole eggs in, and then we're just going to use the yolk from the last one. Okay, and now I'm going to use my hand mixer here, and we're just going to whip, like kind of cream the eggs and the sugar together until it's like nice and creamy. And this is going to be what is the main rising agent for our brownies are those eggs. So it's going to be a really rich and creamy, fudgy brownie. I give my chocolate over here, nice little stir. I'm going to have to use 2 hands, melting nicely. You can smell that nice chocolatey smell. And this is the for our brownies here. We're going to be making some chocolate sourdough brownies. So we're melting 1.5 cups of chocolate chips with a stick of butter in here. and half a cup of cocoa powder. So you just want to stir it frequently so that you don't have it stick to the bottom of your pan. But you don't have to use a double boiler because we are using so much oil in there. There's also 2 teaspoons of vanilla. We're going to give this a mix. And then we're going to, there we go. And a nice little stir. I will say the chocolate melts pretty quickly. I'm going to turn it down even lower onto my lowest setting. We're just going to let it melt nice and slowly as we whip up our eggs together here. And we're going to try to whip them until they're nice and fluffy for our brownies. And you can see that sugar is mixing in nicely. So, beautiful. Okay. Now we are going to add in a half a teaspoon of sugar, or salt, not sugar, half a teaspoon of salt. And we're going to use a half a cup of chocolate sourdough starter. So this is the starter we worked up yesterday. And I fed it yesterday. It was right here. You can see how much it's rised up. But we have it. This is our beautiful chocolate sourdough starter. So we're going to use about a half a cup of that in here. Let's get this nice and mixed. I think we have a good thick mixture here. All that chocolate looks like it's nice and melted. So I'm going to give it a nice stir. And then we're going to pull it to the side and let it sit for a moment. We'll add it in, but we want to let it cool for a half a second while we wait. But let's add in a half a cup of our chocolate starter. So we made this last night. We used a part of an active starter with it, plus cocoa powder, flour, sugar, and it's just going to be absolutely lovely in our brownies because it will just give you a richer, more deep chocolate flavor. Okay, so we've got about a half a cup there. And we're going to add this into our mixture. We'll mix it up really nicely. There we go. And we're going to whip this together until that chocolate sourdough is mixed into our eggs and our sugars. And it's already going to start to give it a lovely creamy color for our brownies. There we go. Okay, now that it is mixed together, we are going to add in our flour. So let me grab my flour over here. We are going to add in 1 cup of flour. So we have a half a cup of cocoa powder in here, and so then we're going to add in our cup of flour. And we're just using all-purpose flour here. And this is going to make just a 9 by 9 inch tray of brownies. So it's not a huge batch of brownies, but it will be perfect, delicious, extra fudgy brownies.
You got a question for the naan tonight? Are you making a garlic naan or just traditional?
I'm gonna do just traditional because I am gonna make a taziki, like a garlic taziki sauce with our to go with our pocket, so we'll get a lot of flavor that way. Let's add in our flour. We're gonna mix it up, and then we're gonna add in our chocolate paste, and then we'll give that a good mixture, and then we'll put in our chocolate chips, and these will be ready to go into the oven and bake. So this is just a really rich, delicious, chocolatey brownie that we use with butter instead of oil, so it just gives it a nice fudgy flavor. I'll make sure I get all that good chocolate paste in there. There we go. And we're going to mix this up. Then we'll add in our chocolate chips and pop these in the oven. And they can bake while we make the rest of dinner. It'll be a nice, chocolatey, delicious dessert. There we go. Beautiful. You see how thick this is? It's going to be so fudgy and delicious. I'll have to sneak a little taste. So good. Okay. let's not forget to add in, we've got the rest of that bag of chocolate chips. I'm aiming for about a cup of extra chocolate chips to add in. So I have 2 little mini bags full left, but that just gives you an extra level of chocolatey goodness. We'll stir those in. Let me grab my baking pan. And we're just gonna fold these chocolate chips in to it. And that's just gonna give us an extra chocolatey, fudgy goodness. It's like the triple threat. You already have the melted chocolate chips in it. You have the cocoa powder, you have the chocolate starter, and then additional chocolate chips. So this is a very decadent dessert, but it will be delicious. I'm just going to grease up a pan. Normally you would use a square pan, but I, for some reason, don't have a square pan. I don't know why. I used to have one a long time ago and I've just never replaced it. And I've always just used my cake pans for it because they work just as well.
So you have a question? Have you ever cooked Indian food like tiki masala?
I have. I actually love Indian food. Unfortunately, nobody in my family shares that sentiment with me, but I do. Sometimes I'll cook it for my parents and I because I absolutely love it, but it is my favorite. None of them like it. My husband doesn't like it, and my kids don't like it. So it's not something I often cook, but I do love it. I do make a good like curry, a saag, like a chicken korma, a butter chicken. So good. But I've got children and husband who have the palates of a goldfish. There we go. So delicious. Wash my hands. You just can't not steal a little bit of the brownie mixture because it's so good. Okay. Let's get it off in here. We don't want to waste any. And then we're going to pop this in the oven, and this is going to cook for about 30 to 35 minutes. So as soon as we're done making dinner, this should be ready, which I love because then it's a nice hot dessert for us. We're going to put it right here on the top of our oven. And those chocolates and everything will start to melt. I'm going to set my timer. So I'm going to do it for 33 minutes and 33 seconds. So I have a minute to get over here because we're going to be pretty busy now. Okay. Before we work on our meat, let's whip up our naan dough because you want it to sit for a few minutes before you start rolling out and toasting it. So let me grab my bowl for this. We're going to start with our liquid ingredients and then we're going to add in our dry ingredients. And this also uses our sourdough starter as well as sour cream, olive oil, and some baking soda, baking powder. Grab all of my goody goodness over here. So we're going to start with 1 whole cup of regular sourdough starter. You don't want to use your cocoa powder in this. That would be pretty interesting, to say the least. Where did I put my little spatula? We'll just grab another one out of here. It must be in this one. Okay, so we're going to add 1 whole cup. This is a great recipe to use a lot of your starter up with. If you have a big batch of starter, I have a big batch. So anytime I have a recipe that uses a whole cup, it's like a win. Because I try not to have anything go to waste. Occasionally I do have to throw away some starter. And I know they say, oh, you can freeze it for another time, but I'm always got starter, so freezing it just is never, works. So we've got a whole cup of our starter, and we're going to add it in here. There we go. And it doesn't have to be active. It can be, I think I fed this yesterday, so it's definitely not active for making bread, but it's a great way to use your discard. Then we are going to add in a 1/2 cup of sour cream. And you can use plain yogurt if you want to. I never have plain yogurt here, so I'm always using sour cream, and it does the exact same effect. So we're going to use a 1/2 cup of sour cream, and I'm just going to eyeball this. Let's see, a little bit more. That should be good. And we're going to mix those up. We're going to be using the sour cream and our tzatziki sauce in a little bit, so I'll set it over on the other side. And we're going to put in a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Again, I'm just going to eyeball that olive oil because it is a messy thing. And we're going to give this a good mix until it's nice and incorporated. Let me actually switch out for my bread whisk. It works a little bit better with that. And we're going to mix it up together. And this is going to be kind of the start of the wet base for our naan, which we're going to be having with our lamb. We're going to take a leg lamb roast. We're going to cut it up and we're going to saute it with some great spices. So it's going to be kind of like a hero pocket, but with lamb chunks. It'll be just delicious. Okay. Beautiful. It's got it mixed together. You just want to make sure you get any of those big chunks out of it. Now we're going to add in 6 tablespoons of water. So let me have that right here. So 6 tablespoons of water is about 90 milliliters of water. Beautiful. And then we're going to add in 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Now, if you wanted to do a garlic naan, just change this out for garlic salt. It's about, there we go. And then add about a teaspoon of like garlic to it. And you should have a great kind of like a nice garlic flavor to it. Or you can make the base and then make a garlic butter to brush it with if you wanted that garlic naan flavor. Okay. Now we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Grab the right one. So 1, 2, and then 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And this is going to give it the nice little pillowy puff when it cooks up because there is no yeast in it. And the sourdough isn't being used for leavening. It's more for the discard. But this will give it a nice pillowy soft dough. So we're going to get this mixed around. Then we're going to add in 3 cups of all-purpose flour. We'll do a quick knead. We'll let it sit. And then we're going to start prepping everything else. But making your naan homemade is really just absolutely delicious. It's so much better than the store-bought. So we're going to add in 3 cups. 1, 2. There's a pocket in that one, so let me shake it out. And 3. And just all-purpose flour. You don't need to use bread flour on it because we're not rising it, so we don't need that extra elasticity. So you don't have to waste your good bread flour on it. We're going to mix it around. It's going to create kind of a soft, dry shag, and then we'll knead it together. And then we're going to let it sit and hydrate for a few minutes while we prep the rest of our food. There we go. So you see we got our nice shag forming together. And then once you've got to this section, what you're going to do is you're going to flip it out onto your counter and you're going to knead it into a ball and let it hydrate. Now, you don't have to worry about kneading it for a long time like you do with bread because we don't have to work on developing that gluten in here because this is more like a quick bread, a pan bread or fry bread. So you're just going to take it and you're just going to smush it all together until we form a nice ball. So it's just kind of kneading it, making sure we get all those little flour bits that are escaping everywhere. And then we're doing the stage. You want to let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes to let it hydrate. And that means that the flour is just going to start soaking up that liquid in there and rehydrating. And it just makes it a more malleable dough to work with. There we go. So nice and pillowy soft. And you see it's like lightly sticky, but not super sticky. So now we're going to let it hydrate. We're done with this. I'm going to wash my hands and then we're going to go to our next steps. Okay. Let's get ready. So we're gonna serve our Greek kind of pockets with some rice. We're gonna do a kind of a chicken-based rice. So I've got 3 cups of water in here and 2 cups of jasmine rice. Got a little tickle. We are going to rinse out, try to get rid of that creaminess of it. It gives you a better texture when you cook it up. So definitely give it a rinse. You don't have to spend a crazy amount of time rinsing it. Just do it for like 30 seconds, minute. Give it a couple of tosses. You don't have to wait until you can't see any more creaminess, but any rinse is better than no rinse. And just use a fine mesh strainer for it. There we go. And this is going to make sure you don't have that mushy rice at the end that kind of gets that extra starchiness away. I'm going to add it in here. Beautiful. I'm going to turn my back burner onto high. And then we're going to add, grab a spoon for this, a scoop of chicken bouillon, and then some fresh herbs. So it has just some nice flavors to it when it cooks up. So we're gonna do a nice big scoop. It's about a tablespoon of chicken bouillon. This will give it a nice rich flavor to it, which is lovely because, you know, with like Indian dishes and Asian like dishes, you have like your meats in a nice sauce, which then you can have a plain rice with it. But with this meal, you want a nice little flavor to it. So we're gonna add in a bay leaf. That will give it a nice aromatic flavor. And I'm gonna grab some fresh parsley here. Grab green onion, some fresh thyme. We're just gonna snip these into it and give it a nice stir. So this is about a tablespoon of fresh parsley. I'm just gonna make some snips. You could chop it up if you wanted to, but we wanna just get it going. There you go. We've got 2 green onions here. We're just gonna cut off the bottoms. Just snip it in there. This will also pair nicely with the chicken, give it a nice little kind of oniony flavor to it. And I said it's a great way to just jazz up your rice so it's not just a plain Jane rice. Gives a bit more flavor to your overall meal with very little work. And it's better than buying one of those like seasoned herb packages. And then I've got some fresh thyme here, and I'm just going to kind of pull off the leaves here. Add those. And I will say they'll kind of add in just this lovely fragrance to the rice. And we're going to give it a good stir. And then once it comes to a boil, we'll put our lid on and we will cover it. I'm also going to add like a teaspoon of olive oil. So not much. Give it a quick stir. And again, we'll let it come to a lovely boil. Now, while we're waiting, this is my lamb leg. We're going to chop this up in 1 second, but I'm going to get my onion caramelizing in my fry pan first. So I always have 2 different, oh, here's where my spatulas were earlier. They were on the other side. So we've got 1 yellow onion. We're just going to cut off the edges here. Do a nice kind of slit down. Remove this whole outer skin. And then I'm just going to do some nice, I'm going to cut it in half and then do some nice long strips because these will be great to put inside our little like naan pockets with our like sauteed lamb bits. There we go. So just nice little thin strips. And we're going to let these caramelize up. Then we're going to add in some sweet peppers as well. Grab my olive oil. I'm going to turn on my back burner. And we're going to put it in our little one.
I do have a question. When you cook, do you prefer yellow onion over red?
Red onions are better if for raw cooking. So like if they're gonna go in a salad or like a dip, red onions are because they're less astringent, they're sweeter. Yellow onions are better for sauteing because they have a high sugar content that caramelizes when they come out, and you cook out that astringent flavor for it. So the rule of thumb is yellow onions, Valdalias, and sweet onions are meant for cooking, sauteing, soups. Red and white onions are meant for raw eating. So white onions are for salsas, guac and dips like that. And then red onions are good for topping on salads and burgers. So that's kind of the rule of thumb they say to use with the onions. So we have our olive oil in there. Let me grab some tongs. So I always actually buy all the onions and I have them on hand. But for sauteing and caramelizing up, yellow onions where you want to go. That's going to give you that nice flavor to it. Where if you try to cook up a red onion, it loses all of its flavor. Okay, let's get our meat chopped up here. So this is my lamb roast. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut, it's a leg roast. You can actually buy it right at Costco. You're going to cut off any bits of fat that you see because those aren't going to be nice on it. So just cut them off and discard them. You don't have to go super crazy about making sure you get all of that fat off. But since we're doing a saute on our lamb roast versus roasting it in the oven, this will just be chewy grizzle if you don't cut it off. So in the oven, where you're cooking it for a long time at a high heat, it will reduce down and leave a nice kind of crispiness to it. But in a saute pan, it won't. So we're going to cut off this and then we're going to cube it into nice, kind of bite-sized pizzas. There we go. And this is the leg cut of it. It's just a boneless leg cut. I got it at Costco. It's just a great alternative to using instead of using beef. I think lamb is just lovely. It does have a bit of a gamey flavor, but if you use the right seasonings with it, it really, you don't notice it. And my kids all love lamb. They love lamb chops, lamb lollies. They love it when we do a lamb roast, just because I've been giving them lamb since they were young and they're used to it. But it is delicious. Okay, we almost got all of this kind of fat cut off. And trust me, you feel like you might be losing a lot of your roast. You're not. You're not losing anything that's going to be good. And now we're just going to cube it up.
You have a question. Do the kids prefer lamb over steak?
Oh, no. They love steaks. Although I don't know if they would prefer lamb lollies. I only ever really make lamb lollies at Easter. And everybody just talks about how much they love the lamb lollies. But I'm not sure if they were a heads up competition, which one they would pick. Do you think steaks too? Okay. My kids love steak. Whenever I say I have steak, they're so excited. It's their favorite meal. My daughter loves to send me cooking videos or TikTok videos or YouTube videos of people cooking steak all the time. She's like, I want this meal. I want that meal. And I'm like, I always want steak. She asked for it. Can I have steak every single day? And I'm like, no, you can't. I said, I don't know what world you think we live in, but no. They love it. Even Jack, my 18-month-old, loves steak. I just have to cut it up really small because, he has a full set of teeth, but he's not the best chewer. But he loves a good steak too. And they're picky. It's got to be a ribeye or a strip. They're not a huge fan of the sirloins. There we go. And I'm just kind of cutting it down because, again, I want these to be kind of bite-sized pieces. When you do cook them up, they do get a little bit smaller because, they let out their natural liquids when they cook up. But again, they won't shrink in half. So just make sure you're cutting them to a nice bite-sized piece so you're not eating in your pocket and having to take out and kind of cut it up yourself. That's what I always think about when I'm cutting meat into certain sizes or making them. I think of how it's going to be eaten. And since this is going to be eaten pretty much as a finger food inside our naan, you kind of really have to make it bite-sized pieces.
You have a question. Do you ever make T-bones?
I do occasionally in the summertime we'll grow 'em if they're, sometimes you can get a good T-bone on sale. And I do love a good T-bone. Um, but I always typically look for the most economical one because we feed a small army here. It's typically 9 every day. And so can't buy 9 T-bones. that's a pretty penny there. Maybe for like Father's Day or something like that. My oldest daughter, she now has this love for filet mignon, and she's always like, "Can you get me a filet?" And I'm like, "No, I cannot." When you go out to eat with your grandparents at a nice steakhouse, you can get a filet.
You have a question. What seasonings do you use so the lamb's not as gamey?
So today we're going to do some kind of like a Greek seasoning on it, which is going to be Italian seasonings, oregano, basil, garlic, salt, and then an everything blend. Sage is a wonderful seasoning with lamb. It pairs up really nicely. And it's got more of an earthy flavor, which kind of pairs lovely with the gaminess that you don't notice it as much. But it's about making sure you season it well enough. So don't just use salt and pepper. Use your herbs, oregano, sage, thyme, basil, and a good amount of them are all do great with it. And then I also use a little Worcestershire sauce because the acidity in that helps break down the fat in the lamb as well and takes away a little bit of the gaminess too. There we go. Cube it. We're almost done here. I wish they sold cubed lamb, but they don't. You got to do all the work yourself. But it is a great way to kind of repurchase this, and especially if you don't have quite as big of a family as this. Those leg roasts are fairly big that you get at Costco. You could cut it in half and cook one up as like a roast. And then the other one you could cube up and do a meal like this with it. And it's just a way to take a bigger cut of meat and do it in different ways. Here we go. Okay. These are going in. That has a big chunk of fat. I'm going to wash my hands. And we're going to get this seasoned up. Okay. So we got most of the fat off. There's always a little bits on it, but that is fine for the little bit. You just don't want to have those thick layers of it. We're going to put in about, I want to say, a tablespoon, maybe 2 of the Worcestershire. You don't want to drench your meat because you want it to get crispy when you saute it up. And if it's too wet, it won't crisp up nicely. We're going to add in about a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. So a nice big thing. We're going to add in a tablespoon of basil. And then we're going to add in a tablespoon of oregano. And this is going to give it kind of a nice Mediterranean flavor to it. There we go. I use a lot of oregano. I love oregano. And then we're going to add in a teaspoon and a half of black pepper. And about a teaspoon and a half of this is like a Mrs. Dash's. It's like an everything seasoning. Just a little bit. It gives you just a little extra. And let me grab my garlic salt. It's sitting over here. But while we're over here, our rice has a nice boil on it. So I'm going to give it a quick stir. And once it comes up with its second boil, after you stir it, you'll put the lid on and reduce down. But always stir it once and then let it bring to a boil. We're going to put about a tablespoon of garlic salt in here. There we go. Let me grab my tongs. And we're just going to kind of coat all of this lamb in the seasoning. So it's going to have kind of like a nice dry seasoning coat on it, which will be just absolutely lovely. You do have the Worcestershire, which will add a little bit of acidity to it, but we're going to saute it. So you don't want it to be in a wet marinade or it will just seize out all that liquid and it won't get a nice crispy edge on it. There we go. Okay. We'll let those sit for just a second because they don't take long to cook up when we do start the cooking. We're going to give our onions a quick toss here. Beautiful. And our rice is now got its second boil on it. So I'm going to stir it one more time. Now we're going to turn it down to low. We'll put the lid on. We're going to let it kind of cook there.
You have a question? Is cooking lamb similar to cooking beef?
Yes, very similar. It's actually a bit more tender than beef, than like a chuck roast cut. It's very tender meat, so it's delicious. We've got our naan here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my pastry cutter, and we're going to cut this up into 8 pockets. And then we'll roll these out, and I'm going to start cooking them. So I'm going to turn my skillet on here. We're going to start it at a high so it warms up. But you don't have to wait until these do any rise or anything like that, because that baking soda and baking powder in it will allow it to fluff up nicely. There we go. And I'm going to just give it a nice, we'll start, give it a ball. Try to get somewhat of a circle, but I'm going to tell you my naan always are more like a square. And you want to kind of roll it out, pretty thin. You don't need to go paper thin, but like what a cooked tortilla looks like. That's what you want to roll it out, and it's going to then double in size when you cook it. So we've got our first one here. I'm going to wait until my skillet warms up. It's not quite hot enough yet, but once it gets nice and hot, we will add it on there.
You have a question? What are you cooking the rice in?
The rice is cooked in chicken broth with some green onions, parsley, and a bay leaf. And so we'll have just some nice kind of lovely flavors to it. We're going to chop up some sweet peppers to add to our onions so that when we top off our things, will have just a lovely flavor to it. I love peppers and onions on my little, think of it like a hero almost. And so these will just be delicious with it. And there. You could use a bell pepper too if you want. I find with the bell pepper, stick with the red, yellow, and oranges. They have a nicer flavor to them than the green peppers. Green peppers tend to be a bit more bitter in flavor. And if you want a nice sweet bell pepper, if you flip it over and look on the bottom, the one with 4 prongs on the bottom is going to be sweeter than the one with 3 prongs. So 4 prongs indicates a female bell pepper, and 3 prongs indicates a male bell pepper. And females are sweeter than men. Which we know is true. Contrary to what your husband may say. We'll put our peppers in there. We're going to let those saute up nicely. And this is nice and hot. You don't need to add any butter or anything onto it, but our skillet is hot. So I'm going to turn it down to about a 4 now. And we're going to place our first naan on here, and we're going to let it kind of cook up. I'm going to move this out of the way so that we can put a cutting board to place our naan on when they start to cook. And then we'll rub them with a little bit of soft butter. There we go.
You have a question? Did everyone enjoy the steaks last night?
They did. Oh, they love steaks. Like I say, steaks are definitely my kids' favorite food. It's a simple food, but they absolutely love it. Let's get our asparagus popped in the oven. We're just going to cook them right underneath the brownies. And they should be done right. They only need about 8 to 10 minutes to cook. So they'll pop up, and they should hopefully be done when everything else is done. There we go. So we used the other half of the asparagus the other day. So now, cut them up. Had my knife. It's hiding. So with asparagus, make sure you just chop off the bottom. You want to take off about 1 inch. You feel like it's wasteful, but trust me, that's not going to be good. It's going to be chewy and fibrous and not pleasant. So just cut it off. And if you see any part that has a little bit more white, just break it off till you don't see the white, because it won't be good.
You got a question. Are your parents joining you tonight?
My mom's out of town, but my stepdad will be joining us. Or at least picking up the food. A lot of times he picks up the food and he eats it for lunch the next day. He's like on a thing. So it'll depend whether he eats with us or not. But yes, they always get their meal. We're going to put in about, a teaspoon or so of olive oil. You don't need much. Then we're going to sprinkle a little bit of garlic salt and a little bit of black pepper. And, I always call these broccoli spears. It was my way to get my kids to eat them because broccoli was like the first like truly green vegetable that they would eat. And then these were just broccoli spears. Cauliflower was called snowy broccoli. And that was when like Frozen was out. So I always called them, it's like Elsa froze the broccoli. And let's see. We got our first naan up. Let me turn it down just a smidge. We're going to pop these in the oven. We can take a sneak peek at our brownies. And then we're going to start sauteing up our meat because it only takes about, 6 or 7 minutes to cook that meat up. So we have our lovely brownies there. I'm going to put this underneath. And I think they're going to take a few more minutes. So I'm going to add, I think they're going to take 7 instead of 5 minutes. I was on the countdown. So we added 2 more minutes to that because you typically see a little crinkle ridge. Let's get our oil heating up for our meat. We're going to put in about, I want to say 2 tablespoons. We're going to get it nice and hot before we add in our meat because we don't want it to get cold. So I'm grabbing a cutting board down here. I've got hundreds of cutting boards. Okay. Let's get our cutting board out. We're going to take our naan. We're going to pop it on here. And let's roll out our next one. And we're going to kind of rub some butter over it in between it. That makes your naan soft and pliable. If you don't add the butter on it while it's still hot, what happens is your naan will kind of crack. So I want to make sure you add that butter. Let's get this one rolled out. And these are really filling. So you really don't need more than 1 big pita per person because they're pretty filling. And sometimes my kids will eat the the rice and the lamb, and then they take their naan and then they dip it in hummus because they love it. So you're just going to take your butter and rub it over it. So it's got this lovely kind of butter crust on it. Now, again, if you wanted like a garlic naan, you could make a garlic butter and put it over that where you could have a nice garlic flavor to it. Okay. Beautiful. Let's get got our oil heating up. While we are waiting for that to heat up, we're going to make a tzatziki sauce and then just a tomato and cucumber salad to kind of have like a fresh little brightness to our meal. So I'm just going to cut my tomato out here, just those little, where the vines are. And we're just going to do nice big tomato slices for this one. Because we're going to just put a balsamic reduction on it with a little bit of garlic salt. And it'll just be a nice little fresh tomato and baby cucumber salad. I always just like, when you have kind of a Greek style food, just a fresh cucumber tomato salad is so delicious. There we go. And do a little slide. Dropped it. You just poke your knife in there, and then you can pop that little kind of where the vine grows on out. That's chewy, doesn't taste very good. And then you'll have your beautiful little things. We're going to save 2 baby cukes for our tzatziki sauce, which we'll be able to put on top of our lamb meat. But here,
You have a question. How's the garden doing?
it is doing great. We've actually had so much rain here and then nice hot days that it is just like exploding. Everything is growing so fast, which is just lovely. I haven't had to water it, which is nice because I'm terrible at watering the garden. If you leave it up to me, they always die by the time like July gets here because I'm like, oh, I'll water it tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. this guy flipped. Beautiful. Now our oil should be nice and hot on here. So we're going to add our first batch of the lamb to it. Do not add all of your lamb in at once. If you do, what's going to happen is it will seize up and then you won't get a crispy edge on it. And I mean, it will still be good, but it won't be as good as it can be. So take the time and cook it in batches so you don't overcrowd it. So I'm going to do half the lamb and then we'll put it in another, like a little bowl while we wait. And then we'll do the other half. So just do it in batches and it will, trust me, it makes it better. So you just do one kind of layer on here, but make sure every part is touching the skillet. There we go, and do one more. Perfect. Now we're gonna take a little bit of olive oil on here, like a teaspoon. You don't need much, so just hold your olive oil up higher so you get less on it than if you're closer. There you go. Nice little sprinkle of garlic salt. I'm going to grab a spoon. We're going to give this a toss. And then we're going to drizzle it with a balsamic reduction or balsamic glaze. They go by kind of both names in it. But it's simply balsamic vinegar that has been reduced down. So it's not as tart and it has a bit more of a sweetness to it. But it still has that nice little vinegary kick. Where did I put it? Right here. So it's just the glaze. And if I can open it, there we go. And then you're just going to do a nice little drizzle over it. You don't need to soak it, but just a little drizzle and it will give you just a lovely flavor. So that will be a lovely salad that we're going to have with. Okay. These are my onions. My onions and my peppers are looking beautiful. We're going to give them a little bit of garlic salt just for a little extra flavor. Don't need much, like a shake, because they'll have their nice natural sweetness from the caramelization. There we go. And then I'm going to turn on my warming plate in the middle. I'm going to put it on high. And I'm just going to move my peppers over to the warming plate so that they'll stay nice and warm, but they won't get burned or sweat out. Beautiful. We got second round of our naan here. I'm going to make this one. We'll roll it out nice and thin.
Do you have a question? Kathleen said she was told to never use olive oil for frying.
You can use olive oil for frying as long as you're not going above 350 degrees, which would be, you'll start to see it smoke. So I always keep mine at like a milder temperature. Once you add that meat in, it's going to bring your temperature down. Yes, if you're doing a deep fry and you have it above 350, that's kind of the smoking point of olive oils around like 400. So you don't want to do that because it'll burn it and it'll have a bitter taste. But if you do it at the nice like 350 on here, which is like a medium heat, it's perfect. And then once you add that meat in, it brings it down. So I actually fry all of my meat in olive oil because I love the taste and it's so heart healthy. So don't be afraid because you've got to have it left on there unattended for a long time before it, and you'll see it smoking when it does. So this is steam, not smoke. But if you were to leave just your olive oil in there with nothing in it, and for a long time, you would start to see the smoke come off of it. But this is just the steam from the meat in there. But olive oil is great. It's heart healthy. It's wonderful. Okay, got these flipped. Rotate. We're going to let them saute up. Let me rub a little bit of butter on here, and then we're going to go grab our asparagus and our brownies because I think they're all done. Okay. Let me grab some trivets. Beautiful. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to pull it out I'm gonna give it a nice, it's got a nice firm. It feels like it's nice and ready. There we go. And we'll grab our asparagus in 1 second. These are a nice, thick, fudgy brownie. Now, with most brownies, you know, you can't cut into them while they're hot. You have to let them thicken up. So after about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, so when we're done eating our dinner, we'll be able to eat these. And the best way you can kind of tell, let's stick these in. You see how it comes out fairly clean? That means they are nice and ready. That was a nice chocolate chip melted right there. So beautiful. I'm going to grab the asparagus since they're ready, and I'll put them. There we go. So we've got our asparagus here. They've got a nice vibrant green color, which means they are ready. That's what you want to look for. You don't want them to turn brown or yellow. That means you've overcooked them. You want them to have this bright green, vibrant color. It's going to give them a nice tender cut flavor to them. Okay, we've got our first set of meat, and I'm cooking my meat to about a medium rare. Let's grab this one, which means you'll have, when you bite into the lamb, you'll have a nice pink center to it, which will keep them nice and tender. So you don't ever want to overcook your lamb unless you like your meat more well done, but you want to have it nice, kind of soft pink center in it. So we've got our first batch done. There we go. Smells so yummy. And now, I'm going to set this right over here. So that's our half batch of our lamb. I'm going to throw in our second batch. We're going to let them crisp up nicely. And then we'll make our tzatziki sauce and we'll serve up dinner.
I have a question. Is lamb chewy?
No, not really. It is actually a pretty tender meat. So it is not as chewy or tough. I think it's more tender than beef. Okay. Let those crisp up nicely here.
And how do you keep the meat from getting cold while the other batch cooks?
Well, luckily when we put this on there, that will pop it on there. It's nice and hot. You could have your oven warming on here, but this will be done in like 5 minutes, which means when we put that on top of it, actually what I'll actually do is I'll add that meat right back into this pan, which will keep it nice and warm. And that's ways to serve it. But you got to do it in batches. If you were cooking for a smaller family, much easier. Larger family, there's only so much you can fit in a pan, but it stays fairly hot. There's pretty, I would not eat that. My husband's trying to steal one, and he's going to burn his mouth, and then he'll be like, why didn't you tell me? He always is trying to steal it. He's still baking this morning. He's going to have a food thief over there. And yeah, I should just next time let him put it in his mouth and learn the consequences. But then you guys might see me go flying because the camera would go flying. Okay. There we go. We're going to just roll out this one. This one is the farthest thing away from a circle as can be. That's why I say some turn out beautiful, some turn out funky. Got our nice one on. I'm going to turn this up a smidge now. We're going to coat it with our butter, let it get in there. That helps keep the naan really pillowy soft. It'll be absolutely delicious. And now, let's whip together a quick tzatziki sauce, and then we can serve up our first batch so you guys don't have to watch me make everybody else's naan, because sometimes it takes a little minute, and then I'll call my kids and they'll eat in batches. Okay, we're going to use, let me grab a spoon. And then I'll call my kids and they'll eat in batches. Okay, we're going to use, let me grab a spoon. We're going to start out with some sour cream. You're going to want about a half a cup here for the amount we're doing. That should be good. Okay. Then you need 2 baby cucumbers. You're going to cut these up in kind of a nice little mince. So I'm going to cut the ends off, and then We'll do a couple slices because you're going to have these fresh cucumber bits are just going to be so lovely in there. And it's going to add such a lovely flavor to it. Again, I'm going to cut it in like thirds, and then you rotate it, cut it in thirds again, and then slice it up. And if you're using a regular cucumber instead of baby cucumbers or English cucumbers, you'll want to peel the skin off of that because it can be a bit chewy. But these are very tender cucumbers, so you don't need to. There we go. We're going to take some green onions. I'll take 3. Want to give them to me. There we go. And we're just going to mince or slice these up, and we're going to add them in there. I'm going to take off the top because that won't be any good. They're a bit chewy on the top. And we're going to do a nice little mince. We're going to add it into our sauce. So add a lovely flavor. And then we're going to add some parsley and a little bit of lemon juice and garlic salt. And voila, we'll have a delicious tzatziki sauce. Add that in here. I'm going to give our lamb a quick toss now. Beautiful. One jumped overboard. Do you see how they kind of crisp up really fast? When you cut them up small, you don't need to cook them very long, which is perfect for our meal when we have to cook them in batches. Let me flip that guy. Okay. Let's grab some fresh parsley here. I'm just trying to grab the leaves. We're going to mince it. We'll add it in. And then some fresh lemon juice, which will be gorgeous. And then it'll be time to serve up. Okay. And you want to make sure your parsley's got a good mince on it because you don't want to pull out a huge leaf when you're eating your tzatziki sauce. But you want to add a good amount because it's just going to add such a lovely fresh flavor to it. And then we've got our lemon. So we're just going to use a half a lemon just with this, and then I'm going to pick out the 3 seeds. There we go. And last but not least, the garlic sauce. This is going to add a lovely flavor to it. You want about a teaspoon. And we're going to mix it up. Oh, beautiful. And this will be our delicious tzatziki sauce. If you wanted to, you could throw in some dill too, but it's perfect on its own. I think the green onions and the parsley is really refreshing, but some people love fresh dill in it as well. Okay, we are going to be ready to serve up here in just a second. This lamb is cooked up, so we're going to toss in this last bit. And everything gets reheated, but everything got a nice kind of crispy edge on it, which is what you want. Beautiful. Okay. Let's see. Right. So let's start. We can use this one right on top here. We've got this is our beautiful herby rice. You see all those fresh herbs at the top? I'm going to grab a spoon. Give it a nice mix. We cook this with our chicken broth and our green onions and some parsley and a bay leaf. We're going to add this on the side. So we have our herby rice. And we're going to have some asparagus. I'll try to get all of those on there. Now, this is where it's going to be absolutely delicious. I'm going to turn this off. We're going to take our lamb chunks, add it in our pocket. We're going to take our sauteed onions and peppers, put it right here. And then we're going to add a big helping of our tzatziki sauce on here. And this is going to be our delicious lamb pocket with the sauteed anything. And you'll just fold it up and eat it like that. And then, of course, we will have our tomato cucumber salad on the side as just a really refreshing treat. But it's just like a super simple, pretty quick way to make a great, delicious kind of like Greek pocket dinner. So we have the homemade naan, which is so delicious. It's better than pita pockets, and with nice Greek flavors in it. So delicious. But guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what I'm making for our family, hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of our recipes at home, just go find that video and watch it again and cook along with me again. We also offer a membership. If you want to join us on that journey, we have some exclusive videos, more about our family, and extra recipe cards and all that jazz. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like.